Hello everyone, and welcome back to Secrets Behind the Stars. I'm thrilled you're here, because today we're diving into a storm that's been rumbling through the fandom all week, a storm that has two very familiar names right at its spinning center, Halil Ibrahim Ceyhan and Sıla Turkoglu. You can feel the electricity in the air, can't you? That buzz isn't just noise. It's a chorus of gasps, cheers, side eyes, and long sighs from fans who've watched them since their Eminet days and still argue about what these two should look like, act like, and ultimately embody on and off screen. Before we get swept away, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell, because Secrets Behind the Stars is where the whispers turn into stories, and the stories turn into the talk everyone else is chasing tomorrow. Let's be honest. When Halil and Sıla step out with even the tiniest tweak to their style, the entire timeline tilts. This time, nothing about the change felt tiny. It felt like a door swinging open to a room we weren't expecting, and the reaction has been anything but calm. Some of you are ecstatic, calling it growth, calling it boldness, calling it the moment they unshackle themselves from the roles that made them household names. Others are looking back with a nostalgic ache, wondering where the softness went, the gentleness, the unguarded warmth that made you feel like you were watching two people you actually knew rather than two icons playing dress-up with their own images. Let's start with Halil Ibrahim Ceyhan. For years, his magnetism felt like a quiet storm, brooding eyes, deliberate words, a kindness that flickered through even the toughest roles. Lately, his style has taken on a heavier edge. A sharper jaw framed by a thicker beard, a gym-honed silhouette that clothes cling to like it's a script note, boots that sound like decisions when they hit the pavement. The photos triggered split reactions. Some fans applauded the intensity, calling it disciplined, saying that an actor who pushes his body is an actor who's hungry for range. Others flinched, worried that the delicate warmth they loved was being overpowered by a dense, ironclad masculinity that reads as too severe, too armored, too determined to leave no softness showing. It's wild how a haircut, a jacket, a training regimen can become a referendum on identity. Scroll long enough and you'll see words like evolution, reinvention, authenticity, and, yes, the heavy term toxic masculinity lighting up threads as if we're all sitting in a seminar. Are we reading too much into a beard line? Or are the choices Halil is making a clear, deliberate message that he's stepping into tougher, darker territory to tear down the fences of the one type of role he once dominated? There's a reason this isn't just a simple like or dislike. For so many, Halil represented a version of manhood wrapped in gentleness and restraint, a calm flame rather than a roaring blaze. Seeing him now, carved with sharper lines and walking with that thundercloud energy, confuses those who loved that earlier glow. But isn't that the point of a career that actually breathes? If he stayed the same, would you applaud or yawn? Even those who defend the shift admit it's not just about a gym membership. It's the posture, the stare, the heavier fabrics, the palette that dismisses the lighter notes. It's the sound of a door latch turning on the boyish echo of yesterday. And yet, watch the interviews, catch the off-guard smiles, and there's the same Halil you know, thoughtful, careful, unwilling to play for the camera when it comes to the deeper parts of himself. Perhaps what's truly unsettling is that he's found a way to hold two truths at once, the tender and the formidable. And when a star becomes more than one thing, people who loved the first thing feel like they're losing their claim. Now, turn the spotlight towards Sıla Turkoglu. She's long been praised for a kind of radiance that seems to float rather than push, a fresh, luminous presence that never needed to shout. Recently, though, the timeline's chatter swelled as she appeared with a more sculpted look, a sleeker hairstyle that frames her features like careful handwriting, makeup that reads power rather than innocence, a wardrobe that leans modern and polished rather than breezy and girlish. The makeover set off whispers. Is she chasing trends? Is she bending under the pressure that nips at every woman in the industry, the pressure to be perfected, filtered, refined until the mirror agrees with the feed? Or is she simply playing the game on her own terms, evolving with precision, owning every line and highlight because they belong to her and no one else? The push and pull around Sıla's image runs in the opposite direction from Halil's. With him, critics fret over an image becoming too hard. With her, skeptics mourn a perceived loss of effortless naturalness. And what a tricky tightrope that is. Because if she stays the same, she's accused of playing it safe. If she shifts, she's accused of flying too close to a curated ideal. But isn't mastery part of the craft? Isn't it allowed for a woman to sharpen her look without surrendering her soul? Watch her on set or in candid moments, hear the laughter that bursts in the spaces between questions, and there's that same spark that made so many people see themselves in her, open-hearted, spirited, always one step from a grin. A new silhouette doesn't mean a new spirit, it might just be the costume her ambition is wearing this season. Fans have carved themselves into camps, and the conversations are louder than a premiere. Some claim Halil is staking his claim to heavier roles that require a physical presence, characters whose shadows enter the room ahead of their lines. They say that gaze has always been a storm, so why not let it rain? Others insist the edges have grown too sharp, scrubbing away the domestic warmth that once felt like a hand on your shoulder. Some hail Sıla's new glam as a declaration, a refusal to be pigeonholed as the eternal girl next door. Others squint and ask if the magic was in the simplicity, if the transformation risks turning a heartbeat into a headline. Social media, of course, is the furnace where all this heat gathers. One photo, one comment, one careless caption, and suddenly everyone is sure they know the plot. A tweet turns into a thread turns into a rumor, and a rumor turns into a verdict typed 1,000 times by people who confuse repetition with proof. There are trolls in the mix, always eager to scratch, but there are also heartfelt voices pleading for room to grow, for artists to be allowed the audacity to change without being treated like traitors to a brand. Between those extremes are millions of us, scrolling, pausing, thinking, unsure whether we're looking at metamorphosis or mirage. This isn't just about clothes or contouring. It's about the narratives we assign to the faces we love. Halil wasn't just a leading man. He became a symbol of restraint and tenderness wrapped in strength, a man who didn't need shouting to be heard. Sıla wasn't just a rising star, she stood for a kind of immediacy that felt unmediated, as if the camera forgot it was a camera when she stepped into frame. When symbols shift, the meaning we drew from them wobbles. The surprise so many of you feel is not only about them, it's about us, and the mirror their images hold up to the expectations we cradle like delicate glass. Look closely and you can see strategy in the style. Halil's lean into darker, tougher textures may be a passport stamp for roles with thornier morality, characters who require an actor to arrive not as a possibility but as a presence. It's risky to pry yourself free from the safety of a familiar archetype, but it can also be the only way to avoid becoming a self-portrait that never dries. And maybe Sıla's sleeker, glossier choices are not capitulation but command, a way of saying she's ready to play in bigger arenas where the camera is less forgiving and the stage is wider. The line between enhancement and erasure is thin and personal, but the right to walk it belongs to the person in the spotlight, not to the crowd that claims to love them only when they stand still. There's irony here that stings a little. The same fans who cheered their chemistry and growth on screen now fear that off-screen growth will dissolve what felt sacred. But the electricity that made people fall in love with their pairing was never about stasis. It was about tension, contrast, the dance between light and shadow. If Halil brings the storm and Sıla brings the shimmer, then perhaps this new chapter is the weather changing, not the sky breaking. Perhaps the charge you're feeling is exactly what drew you in the first time. A sense that something is moving, that the next scene could surprise you. Still, it hurts when change arrives without permission slips. Nostalgia has a voice, and it's persuasive. It says, go back. It says, give me the version I know and I'll promise to clap forever. But forever is a long time to hold one pose. When I look at the footage, I don't see strangers. I see two artists testing the edges of their frames, poking at the elastic limits of public perception. I see Halil discarding a softness at the surface to expose a core that might be even more vulnerable, and I see Sıla polishing the surface not to hide but to control, to decide which light she wants to catch and which she wants to bend away. The reality of fame is that the mirror is never steady. Thousands of eyes tilt it, thousands of voices breathe fog onto the glass. But listen closely and you'll hear another sound beneath the arguments. Admiration, curiosity, and the restless hope that the next project will justify these shifts with performances that feel inevitable in hindsight. That's how it works when artists lead and audiences follow. The shock fades when the work lands. And if the work lands, remember this moment, the fretting, the feuding, the fear, and smile at how small it looks in the shadow of a role that makes everything make sense. So where do we stand tonight? With Halil, the debate keeps circling the same question. Is intensity the enemy of approachability? Some insist it is. Others insist that intensity is the doorway to truth, that gentleness without gravity can turn into a pose, and that the most welcoming thing a performer can offer is not a smile but sincerity. With Sıla, the central question is whether a refined exterior betrays the girl many saw as a compass of authenticity. But authenticity isn't an outfit. It's a through line. You hear it in the cadence of a voice that refuses to lie, you see it in choices that add up over time, you feel it when a scene ends and something has shifted inside you even if you can't name it. Maybe this moment was inevitable. They are not new to pressure, they've walked under heavier lights than these. But social media makes every flicker feel like a floodlight, and we, yes, all of us, are guilty of turning magnifying glasses into bonfires. What if we step back for a breath? What if we let the next months answer the questions we've been hurling at 2 photographs? If the goal is greatness, change is part of the price. And if the goal is comfort, the cost might be everything that could have been. In the end, the surprise everyone keeps talking about isn't their hair or their wardrobe or the tone of a jawline. It's the realization that we expected them to stay frozen in the shape we adored. That's our story to fix, not theirs. Halil Ibrahim Sayhan doesn't owe us softness if the role calls for storm, and Sıla Turkoglu doesn't owe us unstyled ease if her ambition glows brighter through a sharper lens. What they owe, if they owe anything, is honesty in the work. And when they deliver that, all the noise dissolves like fog when the sun insists. So, lovers of light and storm, here's where I leave you tonight. Debate it, feel it, wrestle with it, but keep your eyes open and your hearts patient. The narrative is still being written. The new looks are not the final chapter, they're a prologue with a pulse. If you're rooting for them, root for their risks. If you're wary, let the art convince you or prove you right. Either way, stay with us at Secrets Behind the Stars, because you know we'll be watching, listening, and bringing you every beat as it lands. Tell me in the comments, are these changes the beginning of a braver era, or are they a step too far from what you loved? Tap like if you felt the spark, share if you felt the shock, and subscribe so you're here when the next reveal drops. Until then, keep your curiosity loud and your judgment soft. We'll meet again under the same bright lights, wondering what they'll dare to do next.